Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the January meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. My name is Fred Combs. I'm happy to pass the meeting over to our board chair, Mr. Harding Dow.
Thank you, Fred. We'll call the meeting to order and we will call the roll. Ms. Rogers.
Here.
Judge Thurston is absent. Dr. Acapo is absent. Ms. Borges-Gonzalez.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Scheininger.
Here.
Mr. Ward is on his way, currently absent. We are currently lacking a quorum. We will hope to gain one when Mr. Ward arrives, so we will push the approval of the minutes until after action items. My only statement for a chair's report today is to say that over the last couple of weeks with the extreme weather we've had, it's made me immensely proud to see that when the streets are otherwise empty of vehicles, that our buses are there. I think we had one day of a 2-hour delay and otherwise running our snow plan. Like, I have chills. Like, it really is so meaningful to our city and our citizens to see us operating and to providing service in a time when it is really, really difficult to get around. I know from personal experience. And anyway, so just a thank you to our staff, our operators, our mechanics for keeping us on the road and unfrozen. I will feel my toes sometime around April. We will move now to a progress report from our partners at RATP Dev regarding the paratransit service.
So we do have a couple of members of RATP Dev, Byron and Jackie, could you all stand so we can introduce you? Byron, maybe you can do introductions for everybody?
This is Steve Schuler. She's our Vice President of Operations. And this is Jacqueline Spence, and she is our Director of Operations.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your first name.
Jacqueline?
Jacqueline.
Jacqueline
Experience.
Spence, yeah.
Welcome to the
Yeah, they'll participate with
Okay.
the update as well.
Sure.
So I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Steve Scherer. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations for RATP Dev, and you've met the team here. To help kind of put things into context, I started working in this new role in late 2024. So I started working with Lextran directly, although I've been with RATP Dev for over 20 years in various capacities. Began working with Lextran directly in late 2024. So as I began to familiarize myself with the contract, with the operation, it became clear that there was opportunities for us to perform better when it came to on-time performance. So the time that the passengers are requesting for us to pick them up or drop them off, we were falling short of the contractual target of 85% for various reasons. So am I in control of this thing here? Okay. So contractual target's 85%. We have been operating in the low to mid 70s, and we realized quickly that there was opportunities for improvement. So we quickly took action to bring folks in, to do some deep dive assessments into how things were operating, and looked for immediate opportunities to impact improvement. As we get into the presentation, I'll let Jackie and Byron talk about more in the weeds, nuts and bolts types of actions that have been taken. But we quickly jumped and realized that we needed to make some improvement. On-time performance has been, in October it was around 72%, November 78%, and then December was about 76%. Still working on some of these immediate actions that have been taken, still working on some of the long-term actions that have been identified to continue to push that number up, but the trend is moving in the right direction. That has come through efforts from the local team, partnership with Fred and Randolph, of course, to help and drive that progress, and we're focused on meeting that 85% goal and exceeding it here in the future. So I think I've covered everything on that slide. We'll go into the immediate actions that were taken.
Steve, before you do that, sorry, I just want to, just for a little table setting, can we define for this board and for anybody watching at home, what defines an on-time trip?
I'll let our team here talk through the on-time trip here at Lextran. It sometimes varies from contract to contract, but we can talk about that.
Yeah.
An on-time trip is a trip that is our windows, we have a 30-minute window, 15 minutes before the requested time, 15 minutes after the requested time. That's for a pickup trip. For a drop-off trip, the parameters are 30 minutes before the drop-off time up to the actual drop-off time. So any arrival within those parameters is considered an on-time trip.
Thank you.
So I'll let Jackie and Byron talk more in depth about the actions, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Good morning. So once again, my name is Jacqueline Spence. I'm the new Director of Operations, and so I've been working with Byron and his team for the past 30 days, looking into what we could do operationally to get some immediate improvements in on-time performance. So some of the things that we looked at was we increased the operator count to look at the number of trips and how many people we were with staffing. Also, we did some eco-lane updates, and we also looked at process improvements along with the additional vehicles that we received for revenue. Change it. So with taking those immediate items and doing improvements with them, we did a new run cut, and with the new run cut, we looked at the service hours. We adjusted the operator schedule to help with on-time performance to make sure that we were covering the early AM trips and the mid-afternoon peak trips. We also, as I talked about, hired 7 additional drivers to assist with that. With the eco-lane updates, we looked at the rounding of time, which was an issue within eco-lane, and made those improvements back in November. And we also did improvements with the wheel calls, which that was an issue also. We got the time with the wheel call fixed. Right now, we're working with eco-lane on a project for a driver app, an improved driver app, so that the drivers can see the drop-off times, because we do recognize that the drop-off window, there's some issue with the times there, and the drivers not being able to see them on the app can be a problem with the on-time performance. So we have a meeting scheduled with eco-lane to see a demo, and hopefully we'll be able to get that implemented immediately, well, within the near future.
Jackie, can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
When is a trip scheduled for either a pickup time or a drop-off time, or
Yes.
both? Okay. So if someone makes a drop-off time appointment, then is it up to the driver to say, then I need to pick you up at this time?
No, it's all done during the schedule, when they schedule the trip. So when they schedule the trip, they can schedule it for a drop-off pickup, which is kind of confusing because it's a drop-off, but it has a pickup time. It's up to when they book the trip that's done at that time, if that makes sense. I can let Byron kind of.
So I think what you're asking is on a drop-off trip. So say if you had you want to be dropped off at 9 o'clock, your pickup window might be 7:30 to 8. Our issue that we're having is that the driver only sees the pickup time. They don't see the actual drop-off time. So dispatch can see the drop-off time, but the driver just sees the pickup. So the driver doesn't know that you need to be there at 9. So that's where our issue is coming in.
Okay. So is what we're running into, if the instance that you just described, where your drop-off time is 9 a.m., but your pickup time might be scheduled for 7:30 to 8, are we getting people to their destination then entirely too early, and that's hurting on-time performance?
We've kind of corrected that
Okay.
because you have a 30-minute window, so we can get you there as early as 8:30. So we can get you there between 8:30 and 9. Most of our issue is getting there after the appointment time, because the driver is basically just driving blind and they don't know what time to actually drop the person
They just
off.
know when they're supposed to pick up, okay. And then describe for me, what is a will call look like?
A will calls for a medical appointment because you don't know what time you're going to be done.
Okay,
So we'll pick you up when you're done with your appointment. You call us, so we have an hour from the time that you call us to come and pick you up.
okay.
Thank you.
Is it, a reasonable thing to assume that the nature of will call bookings can throw a bit of havoc into the daily schedule because we don't know when that trip's going to occur, but it has to occur, and how does that trip then get assigned?
Yes, we average about 25 to 30 will calls a day. It kind of does. A lot of them, with our new schedule, we realize that a lot of our will calls are later on in the afternoon. Some of them occur during rush hour, so we try to overstaff for those hours just to account for those.
Okay.
And I say just the nature of the trip, because we have to be there within an hour from the time they call. So,
Yep. Thank you. Keep going.
Okay. So with process improvement, we do reconciling at the end of the month with Lextran, looking at the trips, looking at the on-time performance. So we wanted to have a better process in doing that. And so we streamlined that process where during the first couple of days of the month, 1st through the 5th, we send the information over ahead of time for Lextran to take a look at, and then we work together and look at the trips and talk about maybe if there's any concerns or issue with those particular trips and resolve it so that we can come together with the on-time performance and what it should look like for the end of the month. And then one of the things that we have recommended is enforcement of the rider's guide to help improve no-shows and late cancellations. And so we're still in the process of working with Lextran to try to get that done. And then there was acquisition of new vehicles. We got 9 new vans, 3 cutaways, and we're expecting new vehicles sometime within the first quarter of this year. So I'll let Byron talk about what the no-shows and the late cancellations look like for us on a monthly basis.
Thank you.
good morning. I'm Byron Robinson, the General Manager of Wheels. So 2 areas of opportunity that we found were the late cancellations and the no-shows. So one of our recommendations is to enforce the late cancellation policy. Late cancellation is 2 hours before the trip window opens. The customer would need to call to cancel that trip. We average about 928 of those a month, which is 6.7% of all total trips. And we've got 2 charts up there which shows the distance. A lot of those trips are when the driver is en route, they'll cancel. And also the hours. So you can see the peak hours, which are 8, 9, and 10. And then again during the rush hour, which for our location is usually between 2 and 6 o'clock is our rush hour with traffic and things like that. Among the top 135 offenders for late cancellations, 45 of them are also offenders for no-shows. So it does kind of has an impact on our service.
So Byron, when you say enforcing this policy, what does enforcement look like?
I think that's we're kind of still working on the language, us and Lextran to, right now we're sending out letters. I think we need to update the rider's guide. We found some discrepancies on that as far as the times of when the people can actually call. We've got our customer service hours, but we don't let them know that they can call before 7 and after 4:30, after 4:45. So just some of that language, getting that language tweaked will help some of those issues, I believe.
But Byron, so what a certain number of late cancellations would result in?
It's 20% of your late cancellations will result in a suspension. Okay. So that's we don't enforce any of the policies, so that's something that would fall on Lextran's side.
20% of your trips over a month? Or
A month, yes.
If you cancel, late cancel or no show, the policy as written but not currently enforced is that if 20% of your trips result in a late cancellation or a no show, you're suspended for how long?
You're advised,
You're
and
advised, yeah.
you are in jeopardy of suspension. You are not necessarily automatically suspended, and there is a right to appeal.
Is that a Lextran policy, or whose policy is that?
It's Lextran.
Why are we so low? Why is it a 20%, not a 50%?
That's based on federal regulation.
Got it. Yep. And we can't change that. There's no wiggle room.
We could be, we can go one way, not the other. We can't be less restrictive.
What's there? Is 20% the cap? Got it.
Any more questions on the late cancellations?
So if I'm understanding this correct, the majority is between 9 and 10 over the last quarter, last 2 quarters? Yeah, last 6
Yes.
months. 9 and 10 are when people are canceling, right? Okay. And what's any hypothesis of why?
My personal view is that we schedule trips 14 days in advance. I
Okay.
think a lot of people might forget that they have a trip scheduled.
So it came up, I didn't remember I had a 9 o'clock appointment, or I didn't know if there was anything particular about the time. And is that 14 days in advance a Lextran policy or a federal policy or?
A little bit both. I think that's the longest window that you can have.
Yeah. You can do 7. So Lextran's policy is 14. The federal policy is a minimum of 7 days.
Okay. So something we have wiggle room to change if we find that's
Yes.
the reason that we're having issues. Okay. And then the other one says the majority of cancellations are less than a 5-mile trip. So I don't know, not much to gain. I don't know, anything to gain out of that first chart?
Basically what it shows is, like I said, the driver could be like en route, so driving 5 miles away and then trip cancels. So
Oh, this is saying how far they are away.
the distance, yes, the distance of the trips.
Oh, not how long the trip is. So it's saying like on
No, I
average.
think you've understood it correctly, that, at least how I'm reading that is that the trip that gets canceled was scheduled to be 4 to
Correct.
5 miles, 5 or 6 miles.
Correct, right.
Okay, right, not that the driver is 5 miles away before they cancel.
No, no.
Yeah.
But the driver might be at
The driver
door.
could be at the door,
If
they
they've
could be
driven-
anywhere. Right.
They've driven that distance to get to the pickup.
Yeah,
They show up at the door and there's a late cancellation or a no-show. And now they're a good distance from another trip that they could potentially be providing.
and all of these are late cancellations. These aren't like you showed up 2 hours early and I wasn't ready for my ride.
No,
That's
these
a
are all
different,
late- These are all late cancellations.
right? Because I know that happens too. It's like we show up very late or very early and they cancel because it wasn't what they were
Right.
asking for.
So those would be under a missed trip category.
Got it. Okay, thank you. But your biggest takeaway here is we have 45% of all are among top offenders. We have a group of people that are continually canceling or not showing up, is what we're trying to take from this. Okay, thank you.
And then we did send letters for the first time this month to that group of people who are.
And that 6.7% of all of the trips end up being late cancellations where those resources could be used
Mhm.
somewhere else to provide an on-time trip. And the only other clarification I would provide on the 14-day window where someone might forget that they've scheduled a trip is that there is an IVR, an automatic call that goes
Okay.
out to that passenger. I think it's on the night
The night before.
and when the vehicle's on its way to them, to remind them that your vehicle's on the way. It gives them the opportunity at that time to cancel the trip if they've decided not to take it. So there is another mechanism in place to help remind them that they have a trip.
Is that 14 days an industry best practice or something that you'd recommend changing to 7 days? And not something we have to make a decision today, just interesting that we are.
I think we discussed that years ago, but I think because the 14 days has been for so long,
It's a carryover.
probably be.
Yeah, but we don't have to keep something just because it's a carryover.
And I agree with the time. Even if, like a regular person, if somebody reminds you 14 days, there's 100 things that can happen in those 14 days. Like if you go to a regular doctor's appointment, they remind you 3 days in advance or 5 days. So that's something that we can look into the future.
But I hear you say you remind the day before.
The day before.
They remind the day before, they're just able to book it 14 days in advance, which for some people who are planners, they like that, but,
This may sound like a silly question, but what happens if they don't pick up the phone? Does it leave a voicemail? Do we get a text?
No text, the IVR. I'm not sure if it leaves a voicemail. You just have a missed call, so.
Because I don't know how it shows up on their phone, but I don't answer phone calls from numbers I don't know, just as a that's my own personal policy. And so I could understand why that message might not be getting to all of our riders. So if there were other ways that we could communicate with them, I think that would help.
and Emily, how are the letters received? Any negative feedback?
We have gotten some feedback from folks. There is the potential for education
Mhm.
of customers understanding not just what is a late cancellation, but the implication of a late
Mhm.
cancellation. What is a no-show? What is the implication of a no-show? Based on the nature of the folks that we are working with, sometimes that can be more difficult.
Mhm.
Ms. Moran, Mr. Williams and I have been working on just making sure that we are being responsive to folks. They very recently went out. I believe we received one phone call.
Mhm.
Anticipate potentially more, and then are working on sort of that. How do we manage those, and how do we handle that, and what can we do on the front end to prevent the issue in the future for folks?
Any demographic trend for those that get it, like the majority of those that got it had a mental health, like the reason they issue, or physical health, or any other barrier that we're not considering?
That's part of the appeal process, not necessarily. It is regardless of the nature of your disability. That the service is provided to you because you have a disability, but regardless of the type of disability that you have. So application of the policy across the board
Mhm.
does have to be sort of generalized and sweeping, which is one of the reasons this is so difficult
Mhm.
to do, because if I, by the nature of my disability, do not understand the implications of a late cancellation and do not have that capacity, it's really difficult to put someone into that place to say that you may be at jeopardy of not being able to utilize the service. We
Right.
also know that people use these for life-saving trips,
Right.
right? Important trips. And so it's a very sensitive topic. It's a very sensitive policy to implement. And so I think we are aware and working on all of the front-end items that we can work with customers and do the best we can to lower this number. But there are a number of other opportunities that will impact on-time performance that are really important, that don't put the focus on the customer, that put the focus on our policies, our implementation, and operations opportunities.
And how many letters did we send out? Was it 29?
29.
29. So that's how many actually.
Oh, okay. But it'd just be good to know if you're able, like, if 28 of those 29 all had a vision impairment, and so the reason they didn't know is because they can't read the phone to get the text message. It's something that we need to know, because we're going to solve for that very differently than we're going to solve for anything. So we're kind of in the dark on how to solve this. Thank you, Emily.
The next slide is the no-show policy. We average 544 no-shows a month, which is 4% of all trips. And we have the same chart, which show the distance and then the times, which the times are pretty much the same. 9 and 10, and also between 2 and 3 are the peak hours. And no-shows can cause up to 60 minutes of wasted resources. So a no-show, say they'll get the call before, they'll get the call the day of, and they get a call when our drivers arrive. Our dispatcher will call to remind the person that the bus is out there. Among the top 120 offenders for no-shows, 50% of them are top offenders for late cancellations.
Wait, say that again, 50%?
50% of the no-shows are, the people that late cancel are in the no-show line also. So generally it's the same
Okay.
people.
So people who do late cancellations also do no-shows, is what
Correct.
you're saying. Understandable. Okay. And again, it all happens at 10 o'clock? I don't know. Is that just maybe the majority of your rides happen at 9 and 10 o'clock, so it's just a disproportionate amount of?
Yeah, at
rides.
5, 9, 10, and then between like 2 and 3,
Yeah.
the majority of our trips.
So maybe not a trend here, just like that's when
Most of the
you are
trips.
riding the most.
Yeah.
So that's when you're gonna get the most, okay.
And then like I said, you can also see, now on those, on that trip distance, those are distances that are actually traveled by the driver because they're at the door.
Because they were there.
Any
Okay,
questions on those?
this is a broader question, but I do wonder if we're seeing the same relatively small number of riders who are obviously having a challenge with the system. That's how I would look at the same people having no-shows and having late cancellations. Presumably, we know who they are. And I wonder if we have done any outreach with other organizations that work with similar populations to understand, and this is a very like granular, like one person at a time kind of thing, but like what's going on? Because I think, I don't know, that just feels like it's incumbent on us as a public service organization. There are lots of other people who are working with the same populations. Can we see ourselves as a leading indicator that something might be going on in somebody's life that other organizations that they work with might want to be aware of? And so I wonder what level of granularity are we able to see when we're looking at these records, or are these just trip, not rider?
I would say there's a difference between what RATP Dev sees and what we see. They see trip.
Okay.
But Catherine Moran and Emily, they both frequently, daily, talk to individual riders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's okay. I think that's part of how we set the contract up.
Mm-hmm.
It works for complaints, that we take the complaint and work on it and investigate it in partnership. There's that little bit of a division in between the two. So
Okay.
that's to some degree intentional. And then I think just as we've worked together, that's how it's sort of shaken out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do, I know we have some customers that are frequently on the phone, so. And then I know, Emily, you work with other organizations to the same point, who serve the same population, so there is some overlap there as well.
But this trend that there's a high percentage of non-flyers or frequent is across any service organization.
Yeah.
Has a very similar issue. And I just, as a board, don't want to make a bad policy decision because there may be something very unique about this group of individuals.
No, I agree with everything that Emily said, that I don't think our interest as a board or as an agency is to be punitive to our riders. I don't think that helps anybody. So what can we do as an agency and as a partnership to remove those barriers, which will, by its nature, then help everybody who's using the service.
Okay. Well, good discussion, and as Ms. Elliott pointed out and Mr. Combs pointed out, there's certainly things that RATP Dev operationally is focused on. There are certain things that Lextran as an organization can do to help with some of these challenges. We're committed to doing whatever it takes on our end to continue to push improvement in the on-time performance with Lextran's continued partnership and support on doing the things on their end to help enforce policy as delicate as we understand that is. We truly believe that there can be ongoing improvement, but we thought it was important to come today, share some of the reasons and the challenges behind the on-time performance numbers the way they are, to help you understand that there are barriers in place that unfortunately have been established through prior contractors or before RATP Dev came along, and we're continuing to work on how we can improve with enforcement of the policies, partnering with Lextran. We believe there is opportunity and progress is being made. So we're focused on what we can handle internally, operationally, and if Lextran can continue to partner with us and support, then we'll make progress.
Steve, when you've had similar challenges over your career in other locations, what has been the one thing that you feel like has made the biggest impact?
From an operations perspective,
Yeah.
so we don't have the interaction with the riders on a policy level, but operationally, we continue to work with our partners like our software vendor Ecolane to make sure that the system is functioning and is outlined in our contract. So we're doing that, and progress has been slower than we would like, but we're continuing to push on the vendor to make the changes that we believe will help with on-time performance, but continuing to partner with the agency that's contracting with us. So we realize that the FTA has guidelines and they have standards, and it's difficult to come in and make sweeping changes to those to the way a system has been functioning. And we respect that. We understand that you can't just come in and say, all right, here's a policy that has, in some way, shape, or form, has been in place, but hasn't been completely enforced or strictly enforced, and now we have to try to change that. And I think that's where we are today, is that there are challenges with enforcement, but we realize it's a delicate balance, because this is a service that they depend on. It's a service that they rely on for their doctor's appointments, for their daily activities.
Yeah.
So continuing to work with you all to provide the best operation we can, while you all work on how the best way to enforce the policies or the expectations in the rider guide. I think that's how we'll make progress here.
Okay.
I have a question,
Yeah.
and I apologize for being late. Maybe you answered this when you presented. What communication do you have with the riders between the time that they make a reservation and the time you pick them up?
I'll tell you what my understanding, and Byron can correct me, but the rider makes a call, or their representative, family member, somebody makes a call to make a reservation for a rider. At that point, a time is established, both for pickup and potentially for drop-off, if they want to have a drop-off, if they have a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m. So rider calls in, negotiates a trip time with the reservationist, it gets scheduled. At that point, I'm not aware of any communication until the IVR, the Interactive Voice Response System, makes automatic calls out to the rider, to the numbers that we have on file. Makes a call out to the rider to remind them that their trip is, I think it's the day before? The night before, that they have a trip the next day. And then there's another automated voice call that comes to them the morning of the trip or before their trip, and then when they arrive at the home or the pickup location. So between the time of reservation and the night before travel, I'm not aware of any communication at that point, but the night before and the day of.
I just wonder on, any appointment I make, say for healthcare, it's usually by text, and usually they're asking you to respond with a confirmation.
Similar
Yes
to
or
what the
no?
IVR does. It allows them the opportunity to cancel their trip at that time, or confirm their trip at that time.
I just wonder if you would get better response if it was a text message instead of a call, because a lot of people don't answer the phone anymore.
Potentially, yeah. That was mentioned by Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's something that, is the IVR system our system, or is that a Lextran system?
It's ours. We can look into it.
So we can look into whether or not it can be adjusted to a text message, or included also a text message as well as a call.
Now, the call, when the driver arrives, that'll be our dispatch calls. That will be
Yeah.
an actual call. We can look at that text for the other two calls.
So I just want to be careful about how we use the word enforcement, because we are not going to support, I'm not going to support, I won't speak for the entire board, but I think we'll probably agree on this. We're not going to solve the on-time performance problem by throwing people off the system.
Not what we're asking, certainly not
Okay.
what we're asking.
Because that's what it sounds like.
No,
So when you
and-
say
and-
enforcement of the late cancellation policy, I don't understand what enforcement looks like.
Well, enforcement,
Or is it just education about how it works?
better choice of words, yes,
Okay.
education on how it works. But if there is and penalty's not the right word, but if there is a response when somebody has a certain amount of late cancellations or no-shows, they receive that in a rider's guide. So they receive a document that says, this is how the service operates. These are the expectations of the operations folks, the person who's coming to pick you up, as well as the expectations for the rider. And when we don't follow, if we weren't following the contract, then we have a penalty that we get assessed. And if a rider's not following their end of the deal, then there are consequences outlined in the rider guide. We're just asking that we continue to work on how enforcement is not probably the best word, but how how those expectations the education on those expectations occurs. So
But
that,
our rider's guide, there is a point where you reach that you are suspended, right?
Yes.
There's an opportunity for suspension. But
Opportunity
there's
for
also an
suspension.
appeals process,
Yeah,
right?
understood, right.
But yes, there is an
Yeah.
opportunity for suspension.
Have we suspended anyone before?
Not that I'm aware of, and operationally, we're not holding up our end of the bargain, so it's really, really hard to suspend someone
What do you mean we're not holding up bar?
with on-time
Really?
performance.
Oh, understood, okay. So it's hard to say,
It's hard to say, not me, you.
understood, but if we get to the point where we're operating at 90%, we're holding up our end of the bargain, you're not, sorry, you're suspended. Given, appeal and health and all that is not an issue. Right.
And there's, one of the other things that we've worked on in this regard as well is our ATP dev staff calling and interacting with customers before they reach that threshold. So if I'm at 15%, someone giving me a call and giving me education to understand that I'm at that point, not on February 2nd, but on January 15th. And really, the app also offers the opportunity for cancellations for folks, so they can see in real time where their vehicle is. They can see if their vehicle is running late in real time.
Yeah.
If their vehicle is switched. So there's flexibility there. It's another communication tool. I think for us, a lot of the concern and a lot of the emphasis is on communication, education, making sure that customers have the information that they need. We are giving them as a united effort,
Yeah.
giving them what they need to utilize the system in the way that works the best for them and gets them where they need to go, and also that the system offers them a reliable service.
Well, I think if Judge Thurston was here, she would say, there's only so many chances you can give people before you have to follow up with your consequences, and that's, how
Don't disagree with
public
that.
service works. Lady, do you have anything? I have 3 questions. Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Our total contract value is about $9 million that we budgeted.
It's $8 million for this year.
It's a significant part of our budget, and so we need it to work. It's gone from, a third to a fourth of our budget. It's probably one of the most important things we think about, so I do appreciate you coming. It continues to put a strain on the rest of our system. Strain's not the right word. The more we spend there, we have to think about how that impacts our other expenses. So it's a significant part of our budget. So I do appreciate coming. I appreciate you being very candid with these are the issues. We recognize the issues. You didn't shy away from the issues. These are ways that we're going to solve it. I appreciate that you came with some immediate action items. We're not there yet. It's not moving as fast as I think any of us want it to move, which is unfortunate. And we have looked at is it better for us to just take it in-house? I think that's all public. But we don't want to get there. So we want it to succeed. You said it, we succeed together. I probably get 3 to 5 calls a month about the service, and I don't want to get calls anymore about the service. So, and I think just coming back to us with some of these things that maybe we've always done it this way, really thinking hard about why are those policies there and can we change those if that is the root cause of the issue. I don't want to change from 14 days to 7 days if that's not the root cause of the issue, because it may just be that entire population was blind and can't read the text message. And so we're solving for the wrong problem. So if you could come back with what's the one thing, kind of to your point, that we could change, big thing, because we have so many priorities, we just need to know 1 or 2 things. But then also, what would be the one thing that we could better manage our communications to the public about paratransit? I think there's some misconception in the community about paratransit, and how we can help reshape that narrative.
thank you for your time. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Now that Mr. Ward has arrived, we have a quorum. Do we want to go ahead and approve the minutes just so we've got it done, and then we can move on to other things? Or should we just do that after action items? Either way.
We need it before we jump into.
Okay. I had already made a note to put the approval of minutes after action items, so let's just do that. So we'll move to the monthly report of performance and financials.
So we have tweaked this a little bit to go ahead and start with wheels. So Emily's gonna do wheels first because we just had a discussion with wheels.
Sure.
And then jump into fixture out and financials.
Okay.
Okay, good morning. This is not working because it's not on. I was wondering why it wasn't working. Okay, good morning. So we are going to do the performance report for December 2024. A bit out of order, but we will still start with our mission statement. We serve people in our community with mobility solutions. I will preface this by saying I am no Randolph Williams, but I will answer the nitty-gritty of your paratransit questions the best that I can. So looking at ridership, December is one of the consistencies. The average ridership over the last 5 years, the previous year, and our monthly ridership are all pretty comparable. So we had just shy of 14,000 trips on the system. It was about 100 trips ahead of last year. Overall, still ahead about 1,000 trips year to date on the service. And then, if you would believe it, in November we had 13,853 trips, and so almost the exact same number of riders in November and December. Pretty low ridership on Christmas. That is not unheard of or abnormal. But these numbers are pretty comparable to November, and as I said, pretty comparable across the board. But we are still a bit ahead on ridership for paratransit for year to date.
And I ask this almost every meeting, and I always forget. Our pre-COVID paratransit numbers were 20,000 rides a month?
Yeah, we were
Right
just
around.
above 20,000, I think.
Yes. And when you look at that average, the pre-COVID numbers are not nearly as impactful as sort of what we've seen since that time.
Okay.
There was one preventable accident for paratransit during December. Still great for the year, under last year, with only 6 preventable accidents year to date, halfway through the year. So many of you saw this chart last month. You will continue to see it. It has the monthly on-time performance, the audited on-time performance, and then the average on-time performance. So because of data inconsistencies, you'll see that the audited on-time performance and the monthly on-time performance are switching and moving around. We are still seeing some data inconsistencies. The RATP dev staff's presentation alluded to that. We had improvements in November, again in December, to the system to alleviate those things. The manual audits are getting us to these numbers. So the raw number was at 72. After the manual audits, we're at 76. So just for an example of what might happen in a manual audit is that it might show that there was a late trip. And then when we look at the late trip, they arrived at the end of the pickup window was at 2:30 and they arrived at 2:30:32. And it's kicking it as a late trip, and then we are manually auditing it. It was technically on time. I'm pulling this sort of as just an example. And then it's being audited to say that was inappropriately marked as a late trip. It wasn't actually late, and so that late trip gets moved. That's how we might improve it a little bit. So Randolph, RATP Dev, they have been going through monthly, they're going through weekly now, and auditing how are these coming out, where are these inconsistencies from EcoLane, how are the stark numbers that the system is telling us where there might be issues. Byron mentioned that the operators may not be able to see the drop-off time. There's a pickup time, there's a drop-off time. Could it be counted improperly? Could it be counted twice? Those sorts of things. So there are lots of little things like that. We are getting better. We are feeling more confident with the information, with the audited information, that the 76% is the actual on the street, what our customers are receiving. But we want to make sure that you will have all of the information, and as we get better, we hope that the raw pre-audited number will no longer be a raw pre-audited number, but will not need a significant audit every month and be the number, the audited number will actually be the number itself. So what is great is that since July, we have been able to see that the audited number is a little bit ahead of the raw number, and we're hoping that these eco-lane updates will allow these raw reports to give us what we need, and those two lines will converge and get closer and closer together, and it will just become more and more consistent. And as they mentioned, working together closely on these, making these small tweaks, making these improvements with the system, eco-lane will just continue to be better and better. Do you all have any questions on paratransit information? I know we've just talked about it for quite a bit of time.
I have two questions, just that was being flagged, remind me. How much of Randolph's time each month is spent on paratransit?
Significant.
So that's the majority of the time?
Yes.
And then I remember, I thought we budgeted for an additional FTE to work on paratransit as well. Did we ever hire that, or was that still in our?
Well, that Catherine Moran took that on, that responsibility on, so it merged FTE.
Okay. So we have almost 2 people spending the majority of their time every month,
Yeah,
just,
2 and part of Emily. I mean,
Right,
Emily
yes.
counts as 2 people herself.
yes, she does.
And our
Like
customer
7
service
people.
representatives are also fielding a large volume of the feedback that we're getting as well. So that is part of their typical job.
Yeah,
It has
that-
not been a burden to them since the transition, when it sort of all got a little crazy. But it's not been super burdensome for them, but they are fielding the majority of the feedback as well.
And that's something we budgeted for, but we also, I'm just kind of calculating too, like the additional indirect costs we take on because of, if everything was running smoothly at 90%, we would have an AG that was spending their time doing other things and another person that was doing other things. So just trying to understand the implications of that.
And there's some other contract oversight, and like maintenance would do some checks, safety would do some checks, drug and alcohol would do some checks, so there's some other parts of the agency. It's not as significant as Catherine or Randolph or even Emily, but there are some other things in the organization as well that provide oversight of the contract.
And we budget for those too.
Yeah, it's just part of the regular
Yeah.
duties is to
Okay.
help oversee the contract.
And I will mention, we are working through the rider guide, some of these policies that have, as revisions have been requested. What does this look like? Why is it in place? So forth. Right now, RETP Dev and ourselves are in the process of a red line, just on the document itself. Is it understandable? Is what needs to be revised? Is it repetitive in too many places? That sort of thing. So we're working through that process to refine it, make it better, make it more understandable for customers. It is quite a process. There are a significant number of translations and formats that need to be provided as well. So we'll give a more robust update as that process moves forward. But for the recommendation and the agreement, that is something that we're working through sort of in this quarter. I feel backwards. Okay, so for Fixed Route, on December 3rd, we celebrated customer appreciation with free rides to Southern Lights, and we had 10 buses that went out, and that was well received as always. The second week of the month, Avail was on site for training and implementation with some of the upgrades that they're doing and some of the new and exciting pieces that are coming through on our CAD AVL system. Our administrative staff served hot drinks and donuts to customers on December 19th at the Transit Center. Our service improvements did take effect on the 22nd, and then staff were served a meal on Christmas Day, and a limited Sunday service was offered for the community. That service runs from about 10:30 a.m. until about 7 p.m.
Do you know how many people ride that Southern Lights?
I'm sorry?
How many total rides did the Southern Lights?
We had, yes, about 6, something like that. We had, all the buses were filled except for maybe the last one was half full. They hold about.
They were filled?
Yeah,
Yeah.
about 50 buses, 50 seats in each
Wow.
bus.
So 500 to 600 people?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't go this year, but I went last year and I saw the bus going through.
It's really fun. It's a great opportunity for folks to see the lights and get on board, even if they don't regularly ride with us.
Yeah.
It's a great.
Where's it, does it originate from the transit center?
Up on High Street. at the, generally around between 6:30, we just try to pick up. That's when, dust starts coming in. And then we'll run until they get back, basically. Operators enjoy it. They just like doing something different.
Yeah,
Right? They like watching the lights too.
sure. That's nice.
Yeah, it's great. It's the horse park is also great about being really collaborative. They're always reaching out to us. They want to know how many people came through. So it's a great collaboration and a great effort to support the community and give them an opportunity during Christmas.
They don't get off the bus, do they, when
No.
they're there?
We just ride through.
So for ridership for fixed route, we were again very close to the average December ridership. We're still following that typical curve that we see throughout the year. We were, if you're looking at the numbers, at about 250,000 rides for the month, and in December of 23 we were about 255,000 rides for the month. So we've talked about it a few times that we are for fiscal year 25 under ridership for fiscal year 24, and we've been doing I've been working on a route ridership comparison. So where is that difference coming from? Is it days of the week? Is it weekends? Is it holidays? Is it Route 5? Is it UK? Is it Red Mile? Really doing a deep dive into that information. I was hoping to have a little bit more information for you all, but somehow snow is really disruptive for our day-to-day tasks here. So we are looking into that and going over information, trying to see what exactly is going on to get more information. And I should have something more for you, I'm hoping in February. I will go ahead and mention, there is not a slide on here, but on-time performance for December was up at 86.7%, so up from the previous several months. To follow up on a little bit of the service improvement information, we have been monitoring it in July in the 3 routes that we were previously monitoring for July. This is January. For January, and we are seeing an improvement on those 3 routes. We will have a full month of data when we present in February, but it does look like there has been an impact to the on-time performance in a significantly positive manner. And we didn't want the snow events to sort of give us bad information when we looked at it. So having a full month's worth of data will be really helpful to see.
So was the month of January the first full month of the route changes?
Correct. So since they started on the 22nd, it's not necessarily enough time to be able to say that they were impactful on the overall service. But January will give us a full month of information. We had 5 preventable accidents for the month. Closer to our normal, still not quite there. But we had no workers' compensation claims, which was good. For maintenance, they're still doing an excellent job, 100% on the number of preventative inspections, and then about 14,000 miles, just over that, between road calls. And I think that was everything that I had. Did you all have any questions or anything I didn't mention?
I'll just say it because I always say it, 86 isn't 90 and we're supposed to be at 90.
Absolutely, yeah.
And my packet for some reason says we had nearly 15,400 miles between road calls, which is better. Okay, no worries.
I was going to say you may have an incorrect packet.
Either way, that's both of those.
The
are
14,
great.
yeah.
Yeah,
Either one is great.
Yeah.
The 14,000 is the correct number.
okay. Great, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are looking at December. Takes us 6 months through the fiscal year. We are at a good, cash is at a good spot at this time of the year. Our balance sheet looks very similar to last year, but I will be glad to answer any questions that you may have on the balance sheet.
Why did we have so much more operating cash last year?
We had more COVID money.
Okay.
Okay, our statement of revenue and expenses. Property taxes are looking really good this time of year. We're right on track, a little bit over budget. And passenger revenue is staying steady. Emily and I have been doing a deep dive into some of the passenger revenue and passes. It looks like our pass sales are way up from where they were this time last year, which can not necessarily bring in more passenger revenue because you can use a 30-day pass multiple times, but we are selling more passes. So that is something that we're keeping an eye on, and very glad to see that we are selling more passes at this time. Federal funds, we've mentioned those several months. I did talk to FTA last week about the last step in receiving the money that we're owed for this year, so hopefully we'll be able to draw that down in the next couple of weeks. There are no issues with that. It's just timing.
That's our federal funds?
Yes, that's our regular preventive maintenance and our paratransit money that we receive. It's been a timing issue, so everything takes longer certain times of the year, and this fall there was a huge slowdown with the way things were processing. They shut their system down in the fall when they roll over. Their new fiscal year starts in October. So I talked to them last week, so there are no issues there.
No. Well, and like given, I know I've talked about this privately, but the executive order to pause all IIJA funds, and I believe this is a formula fund that rolls up to IIJA funds, we're confident that's going to.
Yes, this money, yes, this has already been obligated. Usually when it's in the obligated stage is when you're ready to draw it down, and there shouldn't be any issues.
Okay, thank you.
Other revenue is right where it should be. That is UK money, fuel taxes, vending machines. It's right on budget. Our wages, as we've talked about since we did the new union contract, we did expect to see this. I think we mentioned with the union contract being a little bit over budget in wages. However, we still are under in fringe. Professional services, this one usually is due to timing. We'll see more things this winter. That will, you'll see more expenses there when we have cleanup for snow and some of the building repairs. Materials and supplies, that's our bus parts, of course. Even though it is over budget, we think that's a pretty good number. That's been staying steady the last couple of months. Our fuel is looking really well. The diesel fuel is running for December was $2.25 a gallon. For the entire fiscal year from July through December was $2.38. And our CNG diesel gallon equivalent was $1.24. So I always love to see the CNG number. We have our property and liability insurance we've talked about before. That came in higher than we expected, so that's going to be over budget for the year. So that one's staying pretty steady. But overall, it looks really good. We're under budget right now, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Why do you think passenger revenue is up when ridership is down?
Pass sales. It's bulk pass sales.
Okay.
So we might sell, the money might be up, we might sell 3,000 passes, so it will reflect in December's numbers. However, the ridership might not show that number until later when people actually use the passes.
But would that trend be similar year to year?
We have actually seen more pass sales this year than we ever have.
Okay.
But I'll be glad to let Emily answer any questions about that.
We were actually, the reason we've been talking about this is we were like, what is going on with the farebox recovery rate?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we found. Actually, looking at 30-day pass sales, December to December, we sold 100 more, which doesn't seem like that many, but 100 30-day passes.
Yeah.
So all of the pass sales were up except for I think youth 30-day. But the passes that are actually being purchased, whether or not they're being utilized, are up more.
And so pass sales aren't reflected in fare box recovery?
Correct.
Is that an individual buying them, or is there an organization that has decided this is their cause and they're now buying passes?
Could be either.
Yeah. All it takes is one organization to buy 50 for their service group, and it's gonna throw us off.
And we have been working with the Office of Homelessness Prevention and Intervention. They did do a campaign for pass sales last year. They're requesting single rides specifically to support. Last year was Hope Village. They've done the same thing, but typically that's not going to be as impactful, I think, as what we're seeing.
I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody?
I have two, but I just want to make sure no one
Okay.
else has any.
Go ahead.
So as a finance committee, I remember we went back and forth whether we observed maybe a 3.25 or a 3.5, and I know Dr. Coppa wanted to be conservative, so I think we adopted the slightly lower revenue, or did we not end up?
Property taxes.
Yeah, for the property tax increase, when we were budgeting in the finance committee,
Yes, we went back and forth with that. We ended up with 3.5.
3.5. And this ended up being more than that.
Yes.
So that's good. We can tell Dr. Coppa that we succeeded, or
Well, we
We
were
didn't-
conservative with 3.5.
yeah, we
Yeah,
were concerned.
Exactly. Yeah, we were looking at historic numbers all the
Yeah.
way back to 2004. It's also timing for this time of year. It also
Okay.
depends on when people pay their taxes.
Okay.
So we may see, you may see more money come in December and less money in January. I've also seen it the opposite.
Well, I didn't read the article. I see it's linked here, that 479 million was collected in property taxes this year. Assuming that article says that's up from previous years. This is the first time I've seen wages, the actual exceed the budget in a long time. Can you remind me why that is? Like, why are we seeing that this time?
When we did the union contract in
Mhm.
October, we actually went higher on wages than
Mhm.
we had budgeted. We knew this was a possibility,
Mhm.
and it's also, part is overtime,
Mhm.
and we're hoping now that we're getting more operators in the seats, we're hoping to cut down some on the overtime. I don't know if Fred wants to add anything to
No, I
that?
think that's it, and we were able to go above what we had budgeted because we knew that health insurance came in a little bit lower than what we budgeted.
Would the board be opposed to seeing this as wages and overtime as a separate line item? Or is there a reason we can't do that?
Separating overtime
From wages? It's just hard to understand those two. We can think on it. I'm just throwing that out there for consideration.
It'd be worth knowing if
Because I
it's
think we just,
possible.
we're constantly here like, oh, it's because overtime's up, but we never see that
We
number.
can think about it.
I just don't know the consequences of,
Maybe just report it on the side or something.
yep, okay. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Okay.
And I did read that article, so
Yeah.
that was great. And Emily, I think you were quoted extensively, if I recall. It's been a minute. So thank you for that. I thought you did a great job. And if I recall, part of our statement there was that we do publish our budgets and our audits. And so I think amongst the groups that are receiving property tax dollars, I think we were one of the groups doing a better job of transparency amongst that group. So I think keep up the good work in that respect.
Well, and part of this comes to like my question to Steve with paratransit. Like, I'm constantly asked by the general public, not the people that are in the know, like, oh, you guys are a for-profit organization, you're making too much money, you guys need to do better. And so that's the like whole misconception of the general public. What type of organization?
I haven't gotten that.
You've never
one. I've
gotten that?
Not that we're for profit. No.
This is
I
my
can't see
Uber
how they would
driver
see
that
we're
told me
profiting.
this, yeah. So,
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
no,
I mostly saw another empty bus.
yeah. So,
Get pictures,
Good pictures.
pictures of empty buses.
thank you, Nikki.
Thanks, Nikki.
You're welcome.
Are we ready for action items?
Let's do it.
All right, we have 6 resolutions this month, and Nikki is going to walk us through the first 2. So if you would.
Okay, we have a resolution for plumbing services. We issued an RFP in September. We had proposal due in November. We did only receive one proposal, We have used Alpha Mechanical in the past. They currently do our HVAC. Deanna has sent out notices of why other people didn't propose. We did not have any responses back at this time, but we do feel that Alpha Mechanical that was deemed responsive and received the highest high evaluation score. They are based in Louisville, but they have met our needs and other services, so we think this plumbing service will be a good choice. They are not the incumbent. The incumbent did not propose. So if there are any questions on the plumbing services, I'll be glad to answer them. You can see their hourly rates are on the resolution.
So the incumbent didn't respond to why they didn't?
No, they did not. The incumbent had increased their prices and before our contract was over, so we had to do some conversations with them, and then when it came time to propose, they did not re-propose.
How much of a call is there for plumbing services?
Chris, you want to answer that?
It really depends. So we've had in the past in December months, February, January, February, we've had a lot for things freezing and things like that, or just general repairs, but it really depends on the year.
We have some at the transit center too, right? We get some calls out there for the transit center.
If we're doing, well, two questions. Do we have a method of preventive maintenance on things like plumbing and HVAC? And if we do, is that done by this group, or are they strictly speaking, something's broken, we need to fix it, and we do the preventive maintenance internally?
We do preventive maintenance internally with our facility technician.
Okay.
So if they need help, or if there's something larger, that's when we reach out to our vendor.
Got it. All right. Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve resolution 2025-01.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul. All in favor? Aye.
So we're off and rolling for 2025. The first one.
All right.
Go to.
I get the exciting ones, plumbing and office supplies. We are requesting to requesting to award a contract for office supplies. We put out a RFP in September. We received proposals in November. We had 4 qualified proposers, and Office 360 ended up being the highest ranking proposal. It's a 3-year contract with 2 option years for a total of 5 years. They have a corporate office in Indianapolis, but they do have a warehouse in Frankfurt. And so the team that did the evaluations for this, we're very impressed with them. As you can also see that they do give part of their profits away. We wanted to note that on the resolution. We thought that was something interesting that we don't usually see. We have a list. I'm not going to read the list to you of our sticky notes and staples, but you can see some of the prices there. And the incumbent was Action Business Suppliers. Their contract ended at the end of September, so we have been just doing quotes since September, but we would like to award this to Office 360.
And judging from the language there, do we help to pick the philanthropy that is the beneficiary of that 10%?
That's how I understood it.
We should clarify that.
I can clarify.
Yeah, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Tronier. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Lindy. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, so resolution 2025-03 is a resolution to award a contract for architectural, engineering, and transit planning services. This one is a little different than the board has seen before. We are requesting authority to execute a multiple award task order contract. So this will be the first time that Lextran has awarded one of those, but I would like to note that this is very common in the industry where we have more than one awardee. We did an RFQ in August of 2024 with proposals received in October of 2024. And we received proposals from 2 qualified proposers, which is Kersey & Kersey Architects, the current incumbent, and SRF Consulting Group. And we would like to award to both. So the way this would work is when we have a task order, we would go to both of those firms, receive their proposal back on that task order, and choose the one that is most qualified for the task order. So if there's any questions on how that would work, I'm happy to walk through that.
Kersey & Kersey's our incumbent.
Yes,
This allows us to use both them and another firm.
yes.
We do this all the time. We hate it as a vendor, but it's a
Yes.
good product.
It is a very common practice
Yeah.
in the industry, in other industries as well, but this, again, is our first step into a contract like this.
I think UK does this too.
We have many
Yeah.
Yeah.
potential vendors.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Motion to approve.
question.
Yeah, sorry, George.
All right, so I wrote down ahead of time, my question was, will the 2 companies bid on the same jobs? And you said that the most qualified would
Yes.
get it. Do we not know who the most qualified is for certain types of tasks already?
It depends on the task and the people that they put on the task, so it could change over the years. We've had different experts come and go. But a good example is our strategic plan. I mean, that would be one of the first tasks under this contract. So we would go to the both, we decide on what the scope is going to be, get both of their proposals on who's going to staff it, how is it going to work, and then choose from there.
Okay.
Is there ever a situation where you just go to one of them and like, hey, you're the better of these 2, so
I don't think so. I
You'd
think
always
we're
have to go to
required
both.
by
Okay.
the Brooks Act to go to both, yes.
You're required to go to both every time?
We're required to go to both, that's correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And does the Brooks Act
Say that
specifically
again?
cover transit authorities? Sorry.
No, that's a federal.
is that federal? Because that's not how like the state in UK does it. They're allowed to just go to one and negotiate the scope. So just wondering if that's a federal rule.
As I understand, that's a federal rule. If you award to both, you have to perform a Brooks Act each time you're in the task order.
Just something to look into, but we
We can
can.
double check.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why UK did it, and people that Jamie's familiar with, is to streamline that process.
But this doesn't necessarily streamline the process. This gives us additional expertise. Because one of these might not have the subcontractor that we need.
Mm.
The group of subcontractors are different. I think a great example is Kersey & Kersey has a local marketing firm that we're comfortable with, that does good work. That might give them a little bit better qualification if we're looking at something that has a marketing piece to it.
We're also required to do this for Amy specifically, so if this were a different type of service being provided, we wouldn't be required to do that.
Maybe over what dollar threshold? Over 250?
I believe it would be based on hours and alternative threshold, so it would have to be 40,000.
Oh. Because I know elsewhere it's like there's a dollar threshold, and under that dollar threshold you could just negotiate the scope. Well, actually, if you've submitted the state does this a lot. If you've submitted and you're qualified, and then they don't have to go out for scope, it's just I can go to just you. But either way, I'm glad that we're doing this.
We'll give it a shot and see how it works.
Yeah, let us know if it's more efficient.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second. Oh.
We'll give it to Jamie, she hasn't done one. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Okay, resolution 2025-04 is a resolution to award a contract for the maintenance building CNG improvements. These improvements came about back in 2017, I believe, when we did a facility evaluation for safety from the perspective of CNG. And some of the recommendations that came out of that were ways to make sure that any methane or other gas was segregated and safely disposed of throughout the facility. This project is part of a grant award that we won a couple of years back. We did RFP 2024-14, which was issued in October. Proposals were received in December. We had 2 qualified proposers, Shelcon Construction and Tecton Construction. We are requesting award to Tecton Construction. The source of funding for the procurement can be seen at the bottom, including the grant award and a state match. So there is no local money involved in this procurement. Is there any questions on this resolution?
So am I right that this was a proposal for a specific scope of work?
This is, yes, this is a contractor to actually construct the maintenance building CNG improvements.
Okay. Any questions? Motion to approve?
Motion?
Thank you, Jamie. Is there a second?
Second.
A second.
Thank you, George. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving to resolution 2025-05, which is a resolution to rescind and replace a resolution from 2016, 2016-17, which is related to the Town Branch Commons Corridor project. So the background on this resolution is from the TAP award. We were slated to receive $428,000 of federal funds, and we were to provide a $107,000 local match on those funds. The city has identified some additional funds left over from that they are willing to assign over to us. The difference in federal dollars is about $95,000, which would raise our local match about $23,000. So this resolution would rescind the resolution before where we agreed to this money in 2016 and replace it with this one, which gives us the authority to enter into a contract to receive these funds.
Because it was 9 years ago.
9
Steve
years
Brashear
ago.
came, and I remember, did the check presentation
Yes.
for this.
Yes. And we are planning to release this RFP next month. IFB, I'm sorry.
Because this was supposed to be the first dollars into Town Branch. That's why he came, he did the big check presentation, and now we're 9 years later.
9 years
But I
later.
believe because some of these federal funds may not have been the best use for this type of project.
Yes, and a lot of this is with state approvals that we're working through. And we think we are at the finish line on the state approvals.
So we will still, it's still the same TAP grant,
Same TAP grant.
but we've gotten around whatever was the concern.
Yes. And this will hopefully, so currently the interior part of the transit center is out for bid. We expect and hope to find a contractor to bring that before you next month. So that will stagger the interior, that's going to be started, and then hopefully the outcome of the IFB for the exterior, which this money is involved in, will follow that. So we'll be able to get both of those construction projects moving this spring.
So the scope of work for this is exterior improvements to the transit center?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. This is why we had to divide it into two projects.
Mhm.
Because the money that was tied up in this grant would require us to do a different kind of procurement. We would have to do the whole project as an IFB, which is low bid only.
Mhm.
So we're doing the interior as an RFP, which is the value-based bid, and then the exterior, which is involved with the state money, as an IFB. So we're keeping the two projects separate. And this is
IFB,
why-
invitation for bid.
Yes, the low bid wins, right?
Because this is federal funds and you need to follow that procurement process.
Yes.
So we may end up with two different vendors?
It's a possibility, yes.
Does that hurt our chance of getting any vendors?
We hope not. We've got specific language in our specifications and our spec book on how this is going to work and how
Okay.
this is going to be sequenced. We've been open about that every step of the way with the people who have attended the pre-proposals. And yeah,
Is the thought to do this sequentially after the after the interior project?
they were run concurrently to an extent.
Okay.
I think we'll be able to launch the interior first, but yeah, and then this will come shortly after that.
Who's doing the interior?
We hope to bring that before you next month. The procurement's still open.
Okay.
How fast can we get this done since we announced this 9 years ago?
I'm hoping, as long as we get contractors in place, we'll be done by the end of the year. That's what we're hoping.
Okay.
And I wasn't paying enough attention 9 years ago, so what is the scope of the work?
So this is for improvements to the exterior. So we've got truncated dome that's going to run along the platform edge. We've got deep cleaning, we've got painting, we're going to wrap the columns, general cleanup on the exterior. We've got wayfinding, real-time arrival departure. There's going to be some structural work that goes along with the installation of those screens. We have wayfinding at each bay to make it much easier to navigate through the platform.
We've seen a presentation on it.
We have. And we can bring that back again. Maybe we'll do that next month. Should we find a contractor, show what the whole project is going to look like again, and we'll revisit that in the presentation.
But I'm a little worried people are gonna be a little bit disappointed that it's not like this massive rehaul of the downtown, transit center. It's just kind of like a nice touch-up. And I think people were envisioning this as like a just being in those rooms 10 years ago, like that it was a massive rehaul of the transit center.
For $500,000.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, at the time, $500,000
People don't
got
know
you
what things
somewhere.
cost.
Well, that's true.
And I mean, I think that the transformative part of that project was the signalization on Vine Street. Like, that changed
Oh, right.
the experience for the average person more than I think anything that we're doing. But it's good to keep things up. Just stuff. Any other questions?
This is very random. So those,
Yeah.
the blue and green poles are no longer gonna be blue and green poles?
correct.
What color are they gonna be?
But right now they're just wrapped.
Like just a white?
Yeah, I think it's a gray wrap.
I know that seems minor, but it is like the major thing as you drive through one of our major corridors in downtown. I just feel like that's what we're gonna get calls about,
Yeah.
that we change the color of the poles.
That was done through a prohibition project.
Say that again?
That was a prohibition.
Yeah, I
project.
remember.
And
When
I
you paint over a mural in this town, people lose their mind, so.
don't think it was ever meant to be a permanent mural. It was intended as, we had done some kaboom projects and some pop-ups and stuff like that, and it was with a Knight Foundation grant and some just sort of like getting the
Yeah.
transit center to be more integrated in downtown before they had really finished Town Branch, so, it will look different.
And we'll revisit
Yeah.
that presentation next month.
And maybe good to remind who's the new downtown council member?
Tyler Morton.
Tyler Morton.
I think that section's.
Or is that
Hannah's
Hannah?
district. Hannah would agree.
And the new,
It's second.
the downtown association person, because they're the ones that are gonna field the
Oh,
calls.
yeah.
Yeah.
That Alan just has his heads up for the business community. Oddly, the thing people cared about.
Okay. Motion to approve?
Motion?
Thank you, Jamie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last resolution I have is for the approval of our 2025 agency safety plan. This is something we bring before the board every year in January. It is a requirement that we update our targets and measures, as well as designate an accountable executive and a chief safety officer. In this plan, we have designated myself as the accountable executive and Randolph Williams as the chief safety officer. Now, I would like to introduce, since we're talking about safety, Mr. Stephen Rohde. He is our interim director of safety and security. Steve has been with us for more than a decade. He's had roles in both operations and in safety and security. He is stepping into this to give us some stability in the safety and security department. So thank you, Steve, for stepping up. He is going to be certainly integral in making sure that this agency safety plan is put into action. One thing I would like to point out in the agency safety plan is our safety performance targets, which look a little different this year, and this is based on the National Public Transportation Safety Plan. We've included one, assaults on transit workers. That is part of what we need to report now. And the major events is a little bit different than what we see in the board packet. What we see in the board packet is preventable accidents, and that goes all the way from mirror taps to significant or serious crashes. Major events has a much more narrow definition. It is when a vehicle is towed from the scene or someone is taken away by EMS. So that's what we're going to see in the agency's safety plan. On the assaults, I would like to share that I'm working with TARC and TANK on House Bill 135, which would change the, or add public transportation operator to make that a class 3 assault, an assault charge. So that's KRS 508-.025, so an amendment to that to add a driver of any form of public transportation acting in the course and scope of the driver's employment to become assault in the 3rd degree. So that is currently working its way through state legislature.
Is that what it is in other states?
I think it's a little different in different
Mm.
states. I'm not sure exactly what it is in the states nearest to us, but I do think this is something that we certainly support. We've been as supportive to TARC's effort as we can, and we hope to get this across the finish line.
How often are our drivers assaulted?
Well, we have 22 last year, and that's a significant increase on what we've had before. I think we see the problem getting worse. We're trying to be a little more proactive on identifying people who, you know, could be at issue, and it's a scary situation. So that's something, even, you know, we're required to have a target, a reduction in assaults, and I think even having a target is a little bit misleading. I think that number should be 0, and we should work towards 0. You know, we've got a 20% reduction here. I don't think that's aggressive enough, but that at least satisfies what we're required to do for this plan.
Is it, like we talked about earlier, is it a common person committing assaults?
We have a couple, we don't have frequent offenders. Once someone has an offense, we ban them from service.
Okay.
But yeah, it's gotten much worse, I would say, over the past couple of years.
What's your hypothesis of the reason?
A lot of it is just people that don't have any other way to vent. It's the only thing that I can think of.
Okay.
The public is changing dramatically over the last 10 years. Really has.
And we do try
So
to.
public sentiment is
Yeah.
just,
We try to train de-escalation. You know, if somebody boards without a fare, hey, you know, get us next time. Let's not try to escalate things. And to reach out to supervisors, make sure that we have appropriate staff ready and available to assist as need be.
Do the assaults tend to arise from disagreements related to transit, or is it, what I read, people not with a way to vent, like, that this might be completely unrelated?
A lot of times it's unrelated.
Unrelated. I mean,
Okay.
you know, they just wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm just not in a good mood today. And we see it from people who are calm, they ride every day, there's no issues, and then all of a sudden they just snap, for whatever reason.
a mental health issue.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten, do we have any buses that a public safety officer rides? I know some other transit authorities have gotten to that point.
We do not. We have a safety officer stationed at the transit center to assist as needed, but we've not gotten to the point where we've had anyone on board unless there was a specific reason. I can't recall a situation that we've had a specific reason for someone to be on board.
So is it totally random?
Yeah.
So it could be any route, any
route.
time of day?
Could be on, you know, Route 6, which is the most paved area, it could be on Nicholsville Road, it could be in Woodville, it varies.
22 is an alarming number.
Yes. And this includes both verbal and physical assaults.
Understood. Do you think it's going to pass? House Bill 135?
I do. Yes.
Okay. Assuming TARC's numbers are higher?
Yes.
Do you have the breakdown between verbal and physical?
We do. Randolph has it. I don't recall the numbers off the top of my head. I do remember being shocked that it was more physical than I'd expected.
There are a higher number of verbal assaults than physical assaults, definitely. And Steve, Randolph, and I worked on a mitigation plan that we submitted to the FTA in December.
Yeah.
And so it's a federal initiative as well, and they're looking at mitigation plans and making recommendations nationally for things that agencies can do. So we are trying to prevent them as much as possible and not just be reactionary.
Yeah, this is a nationwide issue. It's not just.
It's not just us.
It's across the board, small transit agencies as well as large ones.
What were some of our mitigation strategies?
There's a lot of different things. There's a bunch of different categories. There's some of it is ensuring that operators know what to do if things are escalating, how to recognize that something is escalating. So you have a customer who rides every day and is calm and, fine, and then all of a sudden they're up on your bus and pacing for some reason. When do you need help? Why do you need help? Do you need help? Recognizing that it is a problem and making sure that you're reporting it properly. Educating customers. You are being seen and heard while you're riding. You're being filmed while you're riding the bus. So there's recording in progress. There's a bunch of different facets to it. I think we had 9
Yeah, I think
different
it was.
pieces.
Everything from signage to announcements to de-escalation, training.
And so, there's a lot of different pieces, and also just educating staff that it is happening. They know it's happening, but the actual numbers themselves. Making sure there's supervisor support. We have a covert emergency button in all the vehicles, so there's a button that they can push. It says, displays emergency call 911 on the front of the vehicle. It opens the radio up so that the things that are occurring in real time can be heard. It allows supervisor staff to go ahead and intervene without having to say, like, are you okay? All of that sort of stuff. They know that everything is going wrong. So making sure that everyone is on the same page and that we are all taking it seriously.
Assuming it's something the FTA is seeing across multiple different forms of transportation, so not just necessarily on a bus.
I don't know about other transit agent, as far as transit agencies, as far as larger or smaller ones, they're pretty much, having the same effect on that, so.
But rail, flight, like just that it's a trend
I would
across.
imagine so, and I do know that they are looking at all those, and they're kind of requiring each agency to kind of check in on those. And so,
Yeah, rail
this
for
is the
sure.
first year
Rail's
that we
part
had
of
to have
this.
that. And so I imagine next year, this is gonna be a part of the Department of PTAS.
No, I appreciate all the work that you all are doing on this. I think hopefully you can sense that we're taking it seriously too. So anything we can do to help, please let us know. Is there a motion to approve the safety plan?
So moved.
Paul, is there a second? Is there a
Lady,
second?
I second.
Okay, thank you.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Fred, thanks for sending a red line of that.
Of course, yeah.
Makes it lots easier.
Okay.
That concludes our resolutions.
Okay, thank you. We'll move then to approval of the minutes from both November and December. Has everyone had a chance to review those, and are there any edits that you would like to propose? If not, yes, Paul.
In the November meeting, page 1, Jason is listed under members absent. I don't know if he was absent or not, but I think he should be under staff one way or the other.
Yep, I noticed that too, thank you. With that edit, is there a motion to approve the minutes from November and December?
So moved.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there a change order report for today?
There's not.
Any old business or new business? All right, what do we got coming up?
So the first thing on the proposed agenda items is a report out from our first strategic planning committee session, which will occur tomorrow. And that could be in the chair's report, or we could do something separate. We'll talk about how to best report that out. And the second, something we talked about before, is that hopefully the transit center renovation, a resolution to choose the contractor will be here next month. We'll also.
When do bids close?
When do bids close? Have they already closed?
No, they haven't closed yet.
Not closed yet. It's soon.
That's February 9th is when they do.
Okay. Did we do a pre-bid walk?
Yes.
Do we have attendees?
Yes.
Good, okay.
We'll add to that the presentation of what it's going to be again, so we'll bring that back.
Thank you.
And that's what we have lined up for next month.
All
To see
right.
these wraps.
See the wraps?
Is there any need for closed session?
There's not.
All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Thank you.